Hello, welcome to the March 17th, 2026 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be impossible with the number of questions coming in. We will go through all of the questions chronologically as asked. And we will go through in order. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, realize that we may just have we'll probably get through the question, so if we could avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. We should, and several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index with all of the topics that were discussed in today's live streams pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps, so you can quickly navigate to a particular topic. If you want to search for particular topics that have gone on in previous live streams, we could go, you can go to, or I can as well, to cubaseindex.com. There's about 44,000 different topics. So if you just kind of type in the search, it'll navigate you directly to a particular timestamp where you could watch that particular part of the file. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. We also have two people that serve as moderators, Jazz Dude and Agent K. They are not Steinberg employees. They do it to make it a better community experience. So we'll give kudos to them. We'll express an extra round of gratitude to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. So it's a wonderful resource of information, tutorials, links, videos, downloads, presets that are really beneficial, templates that are really beneficial for the Steinberg community. So make sure to check that out. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. A couple quick programming notes. I will be on vacation. I leave Thursday morning. So our next live stream will be 2 weeks from today. So I'm going to be out of the country. Won't have internet access reliably, I don't think. So our next live stream will be March 31st. So, So just a quick heads up with that. So this Friday and next week, no live streams, but we'll pick up again on March 31st. And also today, since when COVID started, it was, I believe, 6 years ago today that we kind of ramped up the live streams during the COVID era. So I just want to wish everyone a happy 6 years. We know some people have made every single live stream. I think Jazz Dude has perfect attendance. And it's been so wonderful to be part of this community that started kind of during very unsettled times of the start of COVID and how it's still going strong 6 years later. So I want to just express my gratitude for the entire community that we're still able to do this in non-pandemic times, and that we've been able to do really great things together and create a great community. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and begin. So we have from I am in drop, or I believe it's how it is. Hi, Greg. I hope you're doing well. I was wondering if it's possible to make the channel strip pre-inserts by default for all tracks. Thank you. I don't think that there's a default setting for that. If we wanted to come over, so those that aren't familiar with this, if we go to a particular channel strip, when we see so we could see our EQ, and we have our channel strip here with our gate, compressor, EQ. We could have a de-esser or an envelope shaper like transient, saturation, and limiter, and this often by default comes after the particular inserts. So when we see the signal flow, if you're not familiar with this, we see our inserts, then going into the channel strip, we can kind of trace the signal flow from left to right. But if we just kind of click here, we could choose to, switch the signal flow of the inserts and the channel strip. But I don't think that we could save it as default. But let's see if we could save it as a default preset. If we save it as a track preset, so let me add an audio track here. This may not be the best solution, so I don't think there's a way of doing it by default if it's saved within a particular template. I believe that's done. So let's come over here to this particular track. So let's say I have my insert first on this track, and let's save it as a track preset. So we will just kind of right click here. We'll call it CS first. Okay, let's go to a new project. And when we come over here, let's add an audio track, and we'll test what its settings are. So we have inserts before the channel strip, and let's say if we load the track preset, so we'll say CS first, our preset that we just made. So it looks like it's not even kind of recalled within the particular track preset. So I don't think that there's a default way of doing that. I will mention that again to see if that could be kind of a default setting. I know some people want that, but you could just simply kind of toggle that behavior. But I don't think there's a default way of having the channel strip first all the time other than manually doing it. All right, Captain Energy Music is wishing everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. We see Peter Bada joining from Montreal. Thanks for joining us, being such a loyal attendee all these years. We have VS Terra Nova joining from Amsterdam. We have Fly V joining from Winnipeg. His parents are out of town today. All right. We have Stefan Larson joining from Sweden. All right. So Chatfield jumped. All right, so we have Jomins from Ghana joining. So thanks for being online today. We have Jason Sykes from South Yorkshire, England. Thanks for being part of the community today. Let's see, Weatherford, Texas. Michael Teams is joining. It's a cold, sunny day here in North Texas. Yeah, we had our weather drop 40 degrees in one day, Fahrenheit. All right, Tim Weinheimer's wishing all Cubase fans a happy St. Patrick's Day. All right. So we see Captain Energy Music just says, hey Greg, just a quick question. Does Cubase utilize any of the graphic/AI cores on a Mac? Is there any benefit to having more? I'm not entirely sure, but I think that, the more graphic cores that you have, the more kind of frees up other resources for, doing system redraws and graphics stuff. And with the Apple Silicon processors, kind of the graphics are a bit more integrated. So while it may not utilize the graphic card specifically for DSP processing, I think that it does improve the overall performance of your experience when running the Mac. All right, so we have Benny joining from Sweden. Tim Weinheimer is saying, enjoy your vacation, Greg. Thank you very much. We have Joel St. John saying happy 6-year anniversary. Yeah, we did live streams before, but not as regularly. So since we kind of ramped it up during COVID, it was 6 years. So Jazz Dude says, wow, 6 years. All right, Troll St. John just says, thank you, Greg, for doing this. Thanks to everyone for having questions and being such a great community. All right, so Captain Energy Music says we hope you get a chance to relax with the family on vacation. So yeah, looking forward to it. All right, Tim Weinheimer's received 1 gallon of German chocolate cake ice cream from Michael Teams. All right, Craig Noble says, hey Greg, thanks for doing these. So helpful question. I want to tell an instrument track to not receive modulation CC data. Try to use input transformer, but couldn't get it to work. Okay, so let's say I want to, let's add an instrument track. So let's say a retro log. Okay. Let's just see if I can get my MIDI controller to work here. Hang on. Okay, hang on just 1 second. All right, so we want to filter out modulation data from a particular track. All right, so let's say I'm here and we're going to play. And now I move my modulation data. We hear the sound change. All right, so let's come over here to our routing tab and we go to our input transformer. So I could do this on the track or I could do it globally. So once we've activated the track, we're going to open up. We want to choose, we're going to filter. And we're going to say type is equal to a controller. And now we want to tell it which specific controller. So we'll say we want to be controller 1. Okay, so I'm going to come to my MIDI inserts. Let's get to our MIDI monitor. All right. All right. So let's come over here. I'm just going to put subtype for my controller. And we're going to say MIDI controller number equals modulation. Okay, so I hit the notes. And let's say I'm going to turn this off. We can see the modulation wheel kind of moving on the controller, on the instrument. So if we look here, we can see the instrument. So I'm going to turn this on. So again, we chose that we're going to filter controllers and we select subtype and we're going to filter CC1. So now that I place a check mark here, when I go to move the controller, I don't see any of my CC1. So I'm moving CC1. Now I'll do this so we could see it. So if I turn this off, we're not filtering MIDI CC1. And again, as soon as we turn this on, when I move the controller wheel, we don't see it. So try again. And even if I come over, let's say, to my controller here, so, and I hit that, we could come over and like as we just come over here. So try to make your the input transformer again, just come right over here and we will choose on this particular track that we want that particular input transformer. So again, we want to choose to filter MIDI is equal to controller, And you want to choose subtype here. So subtype is what subtype of the controller, so which controller. And we want to say equal to CC1. So once we have that, move my mod wheel. As soon as I turn this off, I move my mod wheel. So give that a try and let me know if that works for you. So let me know if that's helpful, Craig. All right. All right, Jazz Dude says, we made something totally annoying, stay home, into a good energy sharing our knowledge. That's a great point. And I got to stay home and hang out with my family. So glad I didn't have to travel 2 or 3 weeks a month. And I got to hang out with my son a lot more. All right, so we see from Dahir Doobie says, you put your mixer at the bottom. I can't watch anymore. Laughing out loud. All right. Tim Weinheimer says, thanks, Greg, for 6 years of getting the most out of Cubase and other Steinberg products. You're welcome, and thanks for being a loyal attendee. It's always great catching up with you at the NAMM show. All right, so we have Roland stuff. Just wishing Club Cubase kickoff since happy 6th birthday. So I had to give Robbie Bowling credit. He was always sending me emails. You need to do it again. You need to do it again. So now that I had free time, I was able to do that. So we'll give Robbie Bowling credit. I haven't seen him on in a while. Hope he's doing well. All right. So we see Beverly Beatty says, just saying hi to Greg, Jazzy, everybody here in the Cubase live stream. Have to dash for a few hours. Hope you have a good day, and hopefully we'll see you at the end. All right, so we have Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. He's got buddies waving from Paul. Hello to my cat Steven, Stella, Mark Raven's dog Mia. I believe it's Michael Teams' cat, and other pets nearby, and he's ready to learn. Michael Teams says, congratulations on 6 years of fabulous work and help in the Cubase Nation. One count is Scooby's Black Diamond Ice Cream. Sounds good. All right, so we see Soren joining from Sweden. Matt Elliston is on. Nico Thomas is joining from Hamina, Finland. Thanks for joining us, being part of the community today. All right, you see Brian Sawyer joining from Yuma, Arizona. All right, so we see, Greg, is there a way the interval of 6 can stay in scale within the logical editor? I was working on tuning most of them into 6 intervals, but a couple kept going out of scale. All right, so let's say we want to play just a melody here, so let's say. All right, so say we have a melody and we want to, let's say that was in D minor, and we want to move it up a 6th and stay in key. All right, so I think we could do it. Let's give it a shot. All right, so let's go to our MIDI logical editor. Okay. So we'll say transpose to scale. Let's see if we could. All right, so let's say. Okay, so let's say if we come over here and we add a 6th, so that would be like a seventh, 7 intervals, that would be a minor sixth. All right, so now we have this. All right, so we transpose it up, let's say a minor 6, but let's see if we could add. If we come over here to subtype and we set to transpose to scale, D minor. All right, so let's see. All right, so let's see if I'll take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this track and see if we get different results if we don't have that in. All right, so I want to run the logical editor on this particular melody. All right, and let's say if I take out this last one, I just go up a minor sixth. Let's see if we get kind of the same results. So it looks kind of like same results here, but let's see. Okay. Okay, so let's say we just go up a minor 6 here in this example. And let's add the caveat of fitting it within the A minor scale. Here, so we'll say transpose to scale D Aeolian. And we can see if we get kind of the same results when we play back. So you could try that Steinberg MIDI and see if that does the trick. Now let's see if I go up. Let me just try going up a major sixth and see if that makes a difference. Okay, so now we look at this particular part. And let's see what happens if we add okay, so let's say we have that as, I think it was 8. And then, sorry. Or did we do 9? And let's come over here and change the pitch within the scale. And see if those play back the same notes. Yep, so if you just, looks like if you just kind of do the pitch here and then have it do the specific scale, that you could do kind of scale correction at the same time. So give that a try. Let me know if it works for you. All right, so we have Train 43 checking in from Suffolk, Virginia. Thanks for joining us, fellow Virginian. All right, Captain Energy Music's received 1 gallon of Bailey's ice cream. See, Brian just says thank you for 6 years. Thanks for being a loyal attendee. Get to spend my 2 afternoons a week with a wonderful group of people. All right, Roland Sub says, hi Greg, I often find particular drum sounds I really like in a Groove Agent beat and then want to transfer those same sounds into a pattern event to use there. Is that possible, please? So we can take a pattern and turn the pattern into a MIDI event, but we can't take a MIDI event into a pattern. So there isn't a way of importing a particular pattern, like a MIDI part. Like I can't take this and convert that into the pattern editor, but I could take the pattern editor and I could do the opposite. So they'll be different in that regards. So sorry about that. All right, so we see Soren just says it's in a bit of a crisis. Both his stationary PC and his laptop have broken down this week. PC exploded. The power supply had bad components that failed with a loud bang. Says I might get repair on insurance. Sorry to hear that. That's always a bummer when your computer breaks. It never happens at a good time. All right, we see John Costigan joining from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks for being on, being a loyal attendee all these years. All right. All right, so we have Lelsik 4793 joining from Switzerland. We have Parabot 2 joining from Melbourne in Australia, one of my favorite cities I've been to. We have Rick France joining from the Pacific Northwest. All right, so we see John Barry VU just says, evening Greg, got retrolog scaling in the end, increased global scaling and then reset, and now both pad shop and retrolog scaling okay, but only with the keyboard shortcut scaling menu is blacked out. Yeah, so if you want to send me a picture, John, just so I can see what it looks like when you open up like retrolog. So let me know if you see this little drop down menu, if that's visible or not. So if you could let me know if you want to send me a screenshot to clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to take a look at it for you. All right, so we have John Koutsalinas joining from the UK. Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button. See, Soren just asking if Jazzy knows that if power supply failure can cause damage to other components. All right, so see that Tim K is enjoying his pistachio mint ice cream for St. Patrick's Day. Okay, reading through comments. Sabertooth is just saying, warm Tolex is a nice smell. Cooking motherboards, not so much. All right, so let's jump over. I think we had a question that was mailed in. All right, so we had a question of how to automate parameters in a plugin when using the pattern editor. Okay, so let's come over here. And let me just put in quick pattern. We'll make a pattern event as opposed to a MIDI. Okay. Okay, so let's make a melodic pattern here. All right. All right, so let's say we want to come over here. And now we wanted to automate a particular parameter in the pattern editor. So if we come over here, we could, adjust kind of like our velocity of particular notes. All right, right, and we could have other controls for repeats, offsets, probability, play probability, or velocity variance. But when we want to go into a particular parameter, let's say, okay, for this, I want to adjust, let's say, my cutoff. I'm going to right click on the particular parameter that I want to adjust, and then I'm going to adjust the pattern. I'm going to say right click, and we say pattern editor assigned to step automation filter cutoff. Okay, so once I do that, we notice that this has been added directly into the particular project, so in the pattern editor. So if I wanted to just come over here and be able to adjust the filter on just that long note as we play. And if we watch, we could now just kind of come and just on that particular note, we could just come over and assign our different patterns and different parameters here. So let's say, okay, I want to adjust my resonance up. So again, I could right click here. Let's add for the pattern editor, select that particular event. And then you could just have automation of different parameters of plugins or within the drum machine. Again, just by right clicking, and then you could just work with these as pattern entry controls. So if you wanted to control the amount of that, you can just come over here. If you want to shape the tone a bit independently. So again, with any plugin or the drum machine, right click on the parameter that you want to adjust. You'll select pattern editor assigned to step automation, and then you'll see it just kind of pop up here where we could adjust like the velocity, number of repeats, offsets, play probability, velocity variance, filter cutoff, and filter resonance, or whatever user definable functions you want there. Okay. Okay, so we see clarification from Roland stuff. Sorry if I misunderstood. Hi, Greg. I think I mean to ask whether I can load a Groove Agent drum and percussion sounds, not beats, into the drum machine. I see there's an add drum track option, but what's that? Please. So they're going to be like two separate instruments. So if I want it to come over here, so we can think of, we have Groove Agent. So when we go to open up Groove Agent here, we can see that, you know, we're going to have our particular drum sets here. So let's say, okay, we come over to Color Punch, and so now we could have these particular drum kits in Groove Agent. So we could have sounds in Groove Agent, or we could choose to have, and one of the things is just to make it easier for like especially people that are like new users, we also wanted to make it have access to a different drum instrument. So sometimes they may have the same functions, but sometimes people are like, why do I have to load a plugin? What's a plugin? We get that a lot. But now we can say, let's just add a drum track. So if I add a drum track, we could choose, usually by default, this will be our pattern editor. So now when I add a track, I can say, okay, I want a kick drum. On this pad, I want a snare. I want to put a hi-hat here. And we could use samples or different, so we come over here, or synthesis. But if I want to drop like a sample in, we could come over here. Let's get to our loops and samples. let's go through maybe Groove Agent 1. So if I want to drop a sample in here, I could just say, okay, let's come over, and now we could drop. And if we wanted to switch like different hi-hats, and so this will be kind of a combination of synthesis. And so when we come over, we can say, okay, now I want to adjust, like the click sound or the decay of this particular kick drum. I want to tune it to, let's say, a particular pitch, so say to G. So, we could come over here and use like Groove Agent, or we could use the drum machine. So since the Groove Agent doesn't have synthesis options, we could take samples, but the two are going to be kind of distinct, independent tools. So obviously people have been using Groove Agent for, decades at this point, from the original version. And then we wanted to offer kind of a different approach to people that wanted to do primarily drum synthesis. Now, when we do this, when we go to the drum machine, we go to the editor, I could just come right over here and choose to make beats. So we can say, okay, I want to do my kick and snare. And let's get to my closed hi-hat, and I want every... All right, so now we could have this. Now if I wanted to take my Groove Agent part, when I add Groove Agent, again, when I add an instrument track, just like we showed with our melodic with Groove Agent just a moment ago, when we go to add an instrument track, we could add it as a pattern event. So if I wanted to now come over here, we could have our particular pattern, and I could see all of my Groove Agent sounds. So as we play here, I could just say, we'll hit play, and I could create a pattern kind of using my Groove Agent sounds. All right, and so if I want to come over here, so now I could program kind of using my particular, using the pattern editor for Groove Agent while I'm not taking the Groove Agent sounds in. Or if I wanted to have kind of samples plus synthesis, I could utilize the drum machine for that, which is kind of built in. So it's not like a separate standalone instrument. It could be a little more direct and easy for people. But with any of these particular events, when we go to like the pattern editor, we can now drag and drop these patterns directly into our project window. So if I want to, again, come over here, let's go to our pattern editor that we made for this particular track. So we could come over here and just kind of combine those two patterns together. So as we wanted to make a hybrid approach, or so we could use, So if you wanted to utilize the pattern editor, some people think that the pattern editor is tied directly to just the drum machine, but the pattern editor could be used with any instrument. But the kits from Groove Agent SE or Groove Agent won't necessarily load into the pattern editor because the pattern editor is a different instrument. Because it's going to combine the samples plus synthesis, but it gives it kind of a more immediate approach for a lot of people just kind of starting off with programming beats. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. So we see from Gerald Ely, great to see you on from Martinez, California. It says, when using the chord track, if I want to change the voicings, I have to do every chord. Is it possible to alter a single chord? Okay, so let's go ahead and just add a quick instrument track here. Okay, so we're going to go to our chord pads. Okay, so let's say we'll come over here. Let me just make this a little louder for us. All right, so probably what you're running into is like adaptive voices. So let's come over here and say, okay, I want to select all, and I'm going to remove all the chord pad assignments here. So let's go ahead and I'll just kind of paint some chords in. So it's like I want C major. Here I want a D minor. Let's say an E minor. Let's say F major. All right, and then let's say G major. We'll do A minor here quick. We'll just finish out. All right, so let's say we have kind of our, and we see that these are all have what we call we see up in the upper right hand corner adaptive voicing. So if I change like the voicing on this particular chord, so we'll come here. So I think what you probably want to do is just to come over here and turn adaptive voicing off. And now we could come over here. So when you select, if you see like the AV, this would automatically do adaptive voicing to the primary chord. So we can see that this chord voicing for C and E minor. But let's say for my D minor, I could have a different chord voicing. So let's say on my G, I could click on the AV button here. That will take off the adaptive voicing. And then we could, so I think probably if you just select the pad that you want to have the independent voicing on and turn off adaptive voicing, that would do the trick for you, Gerald. All right, Christian Bauer says, hi, Greg. I got a question with Nuendo. Every so often I see automation data sitting in the wrong place. I tried cross-testing all settings I'm aware of, such as follows, events, video edit mode, etc. See if, I wonder if it's maybe like if you recorded something in a loop. So let's say if we have, let me just set this here to. All right, so let's say if I did a, we'll see if we could recreate this here. So if you're doing loop mode, so let's come over here. So say we just have an audio file, right? And we're going to do automation on this file, and I'm going to place it into like a loop. I'll activate the cycle. All right, so we're going to automate. All right, just turn it off. I'm going to go ahead and record on this particular track too. All right, so let's take a look at. So sometimes if you do like a cycle record and you import the file, those may be in a cycle record. So let's say I have this file and I'm just going to loop it over and over again. I think the automation may be. Okay. All right. So let's say if we have this loop and this is going to be take 11. So let's say if we import, or we just go to our pool window. Now, since we recorded take 11 in a cycle mode, so let's say if I take this particular file and I drag it to a file, like, since we did this in a cycle, it's actually one file that's kind of broken down. But I haven't really seen that. If you have a project that you want to share with me that it's happening on, I'd be happy to kind of take a look. But nothing's kind of really jumping to mind. Make sure also that you don't, if you have it set to, check to see if it's in a link group. Because let's say if we have like 2 tracks, we'll just add a couple more tracks. And let's say these 3 tracks are linked together. So I come over here, let's say go to our mix console, and we choose to link these tracks. So maybe it's being used for a VCA fader. And maybe like the mixer is linked here, and you happen to just automate, one of them, and then it's like, okay, later maybe one of them is hidden, and you automate other tracks. And let's see now if I draw in automation on one of the tracks. All right. So let's say we are automating all of these tracks. So let's say while they're linked. All right, and let's see what happens if they're linked and we draw in automation. Let's see if the other tracks follow, which is going to be the one. Yeah, so I'm not sure what is causing that. It sounds, abnormal, but if you want to like just share a project or just one file that's misbehaving with the automation, I'd be happy to take a look at it. And you could send that to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, Giorgio Phoenix asks, hi Greg, quick question. How can I use MPE plugins in Cubase? I'm trying to change the pitch of individual MIDI notes or how it works in Ableton or Bitwig. So really all you have to do is, let's say we have some MIDI notes here. So I'm not sure if you have an MPE controller. If you have an MPE controller, what you want to do is just to come over to your studio setup. So if you have something like a Rolly controller, you can click here in the plus and add your note expression input device. Now, once we wanted to do editing, so let's say we want to go to this instance of Retrolog. So we'll come over here. So let's say we'll listen to. And let's go ahead and just draw in a little modulation data here, make it a little more pleasant sounding. All right, so let's say we do this. All right, so once we're in the MIDI editor here, we could say, let's go to note expression editing. And there's going to be a little preference. So when you come over here, so there's a preference that's set up for the behavior. So if I have a note that's entered, where if I double click by default, it may take you into, so if, a lot of times when I double click on a note, the default behavior is for it to be deleted. But if we come right over here, we could click on, and you may have to just make sure that this is enabled. Right click, and then you'll see for the note expression editor. So you want to show note expression data. So when you click on this E, double click will open up the note expression editor. So now what I could do is say, okay, I want to take this. We have this going into Retrolog. So I want to take this particular track. When I double click, now I could say, let's adjust our tuning. So I could say, okay, let's come over here. And we want to adjust, let's say our tuning. And we'll zoom in. So we could take it out of kind of one-shot mode. So now that one particular note, as we play, so we could now, and if we want to show the note expression data, we could click on this icon. And if you have the controllers, you could automatically write in those particular notes. So let's say, again, I want to adjust my tuning of this. I want to take that one particular note. And let me just take my snap off as well here. So now as we listen to it, we could just so any note that we have in, I could, I'll just draw in maybe a part that's a little more evident. Okay, so let me just increase my velocities on. Okay, so now when I double click on the note, I could say, okay, let's adjust the panning. Let's adjust the volume of this particular note. And I want to adjust the pitch of this bottom note. So we go to tuning. So now when we look at it, so now, make sure that you have this. With this icon turned on, you could delete the note when that's off. That could be default behavior. When we come over here and just double click now, we could open up the note expression editor and we could have the values entered in directly here. All right, so we see Gareth on. He has an event this evening, so thanks for joining us. Gareth is saying the most important feature in Cubase is the cowbell. So. All right, so Roland Stuff says, thanks for explaining the differences between Groove Agent and the drum machine and the source sounds and samples I can use with them. I particularly like the hybrid approach you demonstrated, so yeah. All right, so Spacer just says, hi Greg, what is please a quick way to apply reverb in order to be different on each note in a track? I use automation, but there could be maybe a quicker way to do this. I think, yeah, so let's go ahead and I'll just... Let's say we want to do just like a quick snare sample. Okay. So let's say we have this snare drum sample and we want this playing like every other beat. All right, I'll just duplicate this a couple times. Okay, so let's say we have our snare. Okay, and we want to do different reverb. On each one. So, I mean, we could do like an automated reverb. Probably what I would do is direct offline processing. So let's say I want it to come over here. Let's go to this particular event. So I'm going to go to my audio menu. We could go to direct offline processing or go to plugins. So I'll just come over here where we could choose plugins. So I open up my direct offline processing. So let's say I want to open up a reference. Okay, so I want LA Studio to be applied to this file. Let me just change. Let's say I'll do a concert hall for the first reverb. Okay, so now when we play this, all right, let me just. All right, and let's say for this event, I want it to have a different reverb. So let's put a shimmer reverb on it. For this event, I want it to all right, let me just set a quick preference here, sorry. All right, so So I'm just going to set up a quick preference here. So okay. Okay. So now we'll do our reference here. Let's do this. I want to delete. So I want a different, I'm going to just select these. All right. So let's say this snare, I want the shimmer verb. This one, I want to have, let's say, a revelation. And I want this to be, let's set it to a small room natural. I want the next reverb here to be, let's say, a revelation again. And I want this to be a large hall. Let's say concert hall, bright. So now when I click on these different files at this point, I will say, let's make this a RoomWorks reverb. And let's make it like a plate. And let's say this one, I just want to add a delay. All right. Okay, so now as we listen to it, we'll have different reverbs and a delay. So that way when we select our different reverbs, we can, for each clip that we select, we could have different delay, different processing. So let's say I want this to be like an eighth note delay on the last one, and I could change. So just select. And when I do this, because I just used like the same audio file repeated, that's why I went to the settings, to the preferences, and chose on processing. Under editing audio, on processing shared clips, I chose to create a new version. And then when we do that, we could add tail time as well. But anything that you select, you could just now put in like a different reverb. So I think a good example of this was the song Everybody Wants You by Billy Squier. If you listen to like every verse is like a different snare reverb. So it's kind of a little interesting production trick that they utilized for that. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Spacer584. All right, Christian Bauer says, I feel more like it happens every Feldzug time. Need to find out what's going on so I can work on program material hours long. All right, so we see Gerald Ely just says, my question was about the chord track, not the chord pad. All right, sorry for misunderstanding. All right, so let's see if I have my Hallian Sonic. I will come to my chord pad here. Okay, so let's come. And let me just add a chord. Let me just add a chord track here. Okay, so let's say if I go here, I want like a C major chord, right? And we'll just, okay, then I want an F major. Okay, so let's say we'll make this a G. All right, so we have kind of the same chord voicings for each of these particular chords. All right, so I think if we just come to the chord track here and we uncheck adaptive voicings. So now if I come here, let's say I like that voicing, but maybe I want the first inversion. And then let's come here, maybe I want this to be the second inversion. So again, on the chord track, so make sure that the chord track is selected, uncheck adaptive voicings, and then whenever you select a chord, you can change the inversions of that particular chord to be independent of. So let me know. Sorry if I'm for misunderstanding, Gerald. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so you see Christian Bauer says deleting time. Sorry for the typing mistake. So I just saw your comment. It was that 55 minutes after the start of the hour. But let me know if it's maybe in regards to another comment, maybe that didn't make it into the chat field. All right, great to see Soul Sound Official on. We see Sable Winters is joined from Bay Area, California. Great to see you on table. All right, you see Sable's dropping in to hit the like button while listening in the background. All right, so we see that John Barry sent the email over. Let me see if I could look at it real quick on my monitoring computer. Bear with me just for a second. Don't see the email in. Let me just see if it maybe went to. Yeah, I don't see the email yet, John. But let me know. I'll check in a couple minutes, see if it comes in. Let me just refresh. So, it gets kind of the Club Cubase gets forwarded over to my work email. So let me see. Yeah, don't see it in yet, but I'll check periodically back for it. All right, Tim K just says, hey Greg, I'm still running Cubase 14 Pro. I'm wondering about the AI stuff now integrated or available. In the past, you'd mentioned concerns that stuff created with AI could wind up being determined to be intellectual property of the AI company. My question, has Cubase developed those AI tools on our own, or is this subcontracted out? So really, like, the one thing that, I mean, it can really depend on what your definition of AI is. So I think that the tools that you get with Cubase, the one that would come to mind, your definition of AI could matter, could depend greatly on this. So let's say if, coming up with a chord progression. So if we had to come up with a chord between these two chords here, we could say, okay, go to the chord assistant. So this could give suggestions based on kind of, we'll call it, actual intelligence. So some people would consider this AI. Some people would consider the pattern editor will have some AI stuff that will be kind of randomly generated. But I don't think, and it will use stuff like, Euclidean rhythms. So some people may consider that AI if it's kind of generating data for you. I don't think the probably the most obvious thing that could be considered AI would be the OmniVocal, which is like the virtual vocalist plugin from Yamaha. I don't think any of those would trigger any AI algorithms. I think it's like when you go to, like one of those AI tools and you kind of say, oh, I want a song about this. And it generates kind of the whole file for you. Generally, like those tools where it's actually, coming up with all of the parts, those are the ones that often could get flagged for being AI created. So there's, different streaming services now that won't publish AI stuff. So the only one that we have that's really kind of subcontracted would be the OmniVocal plugin. So, if we were to look at the OmniVocal again, and OmniVocal is created by our parent company, Yamaha, and Yamaha's been doing, Vocaloid technology and this type of technology for 21, 22 years. So they've been doing it, since before people thought of artificial intelligence. So I don't think that this would trigger any AI triggers. I think a lot of the AI triggers are the companies that are giving you the tools to create these. They kind of know what patterns to look for. Maybe there's some secret, frequencies in the generated files that could be determined quite easily. So I have a feeling that the companies that are generating the AI tools also are generating the detection tools, would be my guess. But I'm just guessing, and it's speculation on my end. But I don't think anything that comes with Cubase that people would consider like an AI tool would actually qualify for that. We also have like this, stem separation. I don't think that would do any triggers. Spectral layers, we distribute and have the rights for distribution for all of those products. So it's not necessarily outsourced. The only thing that would be outsourced is the OmniVocal, and that's a Yamaha tool. So, but we are in the same parent company, they're our parent company. All right, wonderful to see VTS 404. I think it's Vishnu, is it? From India. Thanks for joining us. All right. All right, so I see Baba Saw just says Cubase Pro 15 and Sequoia Mac, by the way. So I'm not sure if I saw if that's part of an earlier question. I don't think I saw maybe the first part of the question. Maybe if someone else sees it, they could enter it in again. That'd be appreciated. But if not, sometimes if you enter too many characters, it may not get imported. So Baba Saw, if you had a question on your Cubase 15 Sequoia Mac, please type it in again. Sorry if I missed it. All right, wonderful to see Uno Memento on. Just stop by to hit the like button. All right, Tim Weinheimer says, I'm recording a vocal track and I turned off all the reverbs. I'm wondering how to check if the internal reverb is on in the Steinberg UR44. Where can I check Cubase 15? if there is reverb. All right, so let me just come over here to my audio connections. I'm going to set my input to, let's say, my input 1, let's say input 2 here, my UR24C. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set my input here to mono in 1. So once we have our routing set up, we will see like your UR44C here that will show up. So once the routing, and you may have to go to your studio setup and make sure that direct monitoring is enabled. So once we come over here to your UR24C, we will see the send. So as soon as like that physical connection, the physical input is routed to the track, come over here to the UR24C, open up, or your UR44, UR44C, and then you'll see the reverb send amount. So if that's all the way down to infinity, then you won't be hearing the reverb. You may also just come over here if you get more options. You may see like a hardware, like the audio hardware setup that you may see here. Let me just see if it's, yeah. So like, and you may see like a audio hardware setup depending on your audio interface. And if you open that, you may see like a knob for the internal reverb. But as you're tracking, if this is kind of all the way down, we can do that. If it sounds like everything is going through the reverb, go to your studio menu and you'll see like hardware control, hardware setup for the UR44. I don't think it shows up in UR24C. And then once you do that, you can see like 2 knobs. There'll be 2 knobs. The right knob will be the reverb. You can make sure that that is turned all the way down once you see like the reverb routing. All right, so we see Raw Justice Hip Hop is number 50 and the like. Give my ears a break from mastering in Wavelab Pro in Capitol Heights, Maryland. It says 2 tracks down, 10 to go. Good job. Looking forward to being able to listen to it. All right, so you see Gerald Ely says, thanks, I'll probably need the answer for the chord pads too. So with the chord pads with this, so with the adaptive voicing, it's really going to be just to select, and then you could turn off the adaptive voicing per chord pad as well and be able to kind of so to add different tensions or different voicings. So, and then you could do that just by, again, disabling the adaptive voicings there. All right, so you see from DJ Eric Fox says, hi Greg, can you explain how to connect the Yamaha Modi X M synth with Cubase 15, and is it possible to use it as a VST plugin in Cubase? So I believe that the latest Modi X M, if it's like the one that was released like September-ish or so, has a VST plugin. That plugin is a separate instance, so it's independent of the hardware. So if you wanted to use the Modi X M, I believe it's the one that was released in the fall of 2025, like September, October-ish. So if you want to use the sounds on the keyboard, you would have to just simply come over, add a MIDI track, and then set the correct channel and set like the input and output to the USB driver. I assume you're using USB if you're doing like a 5-pin MIDI DIN, wherever the MIDI is coming in and out. And then when you do that, you could add the track. And then when you record in, you're going to record the MIDI data. The MIDI data is going to be sent to the MIDI XM, and then it's going to generate sound. You could bring that generated sound in to Cubase if you connect it to an audio interface, like the outputs. And we go to the audio connections, and we go to external instruments, and then we could tell what inputs on our audio interface this is connected to. So we could do that. If you're using the plugin, you could just simply open up the plugin. I don't think I have my license activated on this computer, but you would probably just, when you go to the instrument, I know with the montage, that if we come over here, that you'd see like the expanded soft synth plugin. So I think if you have the plugin, it would just do the expanded soft synth plugin for MIDI XM. If it has the VST plugin, I believe that the latest version does. So if you have that installed, you could do that, and then all the sounds are going to be coming from the software plugin. I don't think I have the license. I have it on my personal computer, but not on this one. So this is kind of what it would show. So this is like the montage. So all of the sounds and editing that you do in the software can be sent directly over to the hardware, and the changes due in the hardware can be communicated directly with the software as well. So, but the plugin will function as a separate entity than the hardware itself. But the plugin and the hardware can be synchronized together. All right, so Ed Pacheco asks, hi, when you split a track, how do you eliminate the GM 051 synth that appears? Sometimes it interferes when I want to align it with the beat. So I'm not sure if it's going to be... So let's say if we have like two voices here, and so I'm not sure if you're doing like, so let's say in this part we have two voices, as we can see here. And when I come over to my MIDI, I'm not sure if this is what you mean when we go to the dissolve part and we choose to, separate channels or separate pitches. So if we come over here and we separate the pitches, we may notice that we see like, retrolog 01, D2, A sharp 2. And so that's kind of the default of how it gets going. So if you wanted to eliminate like GM 051 from all of those, you could just select, let's say, all of these particular tracks. Just to make sure I have my keyboard set to the right. Okay. And when we go to, you could, if you wanted to, if you had it like for 100 tracks, you could go to like a Project Logical editor. If you wanted to, and say, okay, we want to transform, we'll say container type is track, and then we want to transform, and we'll say name, and then we could say we want to replace like retrolog 01. And then I will come over here and just type in all right, so Okay, so we'll say replace search string. So we'll say retrolog 01. And then for parameter 2, we can just type in like the space. So now every track that has a retrolog 01 in the name will be erased. So again, we want to transform, container type is equal to tracks, name, replace search string. You can take out your GM051 or whatever exact text and just replace it with parameter 2. Just hit the space bar, and then that will change the name on all of your tracks. So let me know if that's kind of the right path. All right. All right, so we see from Baba Sauce's example, says I could set the upper, lower boundaries so I can write tempo changes in real time in that limited range. Hope that helps. Okay, so let's see if so I'm not sure if you're trying to write tempo changes in real time, but let's say I think I'm still missing maybe part of maybe the original question, but let's say if I come here to my tempo, so if I wanted my tempo to only be from 80 to 120, or let's say 100 to 120. So now as I enter in values, let's see if, all right, so we're above that. All right, so let's say we want between 100 and 120. So if I kind of expand this over, so now as I draw tempo changes in, the smallest will be 100, the top will be 120. But let me know if I'm missing like just the beginning of the question, Babasa. Okay, so you want to write tempo changes in. Now, if we go to our tempo editor, there is like a little input recording here. But I don't think that this will follow the tempo changes. So let's say if I'm here, I could write, that's not going to be limited. But let me know, like, if you want to record tempo changes in real time with that, or if you, or if you're just kind of drawing it in, because usually you're not adjusting the tempo from an external device. All right. All right, Perceptive Audio says, hey Greg, I want to select all the audio in a project. There's a way to set this up in a project logical editor. Okay, so let's say we have some audio files in here. Let me just see. All right, I'll just drop some more audio in randomly. Okay, so let's go duplicate that a couple times. All right, so we're going to have audio here. I'm going to, let's duplicate this track. I'm going to move it up. And I will shift this over. And we'll move a MIDI track in the middle. So let's say we want to select all audio events in our project. So let's go to our project logical editor. So we want to choose select. We'll say media type equals audio. So I think that might do it. So let's come over here. Yep. So just come here. So none of the other events are selected, just the audio events. So select media type is equal to audio. Okay, so we see from Baba Saw, it says, interesting, it's not letting me copy and paste my main question. It says, I want to write tempo changes with a MIDI CC controller. I'd like to do this in real time as my track is playing to make it feel rubato. Yes, I don't think, when we go into the tempo editor here, and we open this, I think that if we see if it follows, turn on my CC 121 here. So it's not a MIDI CC, but if I'm here, if I open this up, we can't necessarily assign this to a MIDI CC, but we could just grab the mouse wheel and kind of control. So if you want to do, kind of rubato stuff, generally what I would do is, if you have the ability, I would play it rubato and do a tempo map afterwards. So how I would approach it is, some people, try to have follow the computer, but let's say we just open up a quick project to show. Little piano part played by my friend Kevin Doucette. Wonderful musician, human being. All right, so let's say if we have something like this, and we put on our click track. So let's say this isn't following, but it was played in rubato. What I would do is just come over here to the project menu to tempo track and just say tempo detection and do an analysis of the MIDI part. And now and it's automatically created the tempo map for us. You see that as it speeds up and slows down. So you could play something in rubato and have Cubase do the tempo detection of that. So, and I think that will often yield kind of better results. But let me know if that's helpful for you, Baba Saw. All right, so we have rolling stuff. Says Greg, I'm adding a whole note mono delay to flutter and fade vocals at the end of each lyric line. I'm triggering it when it starts in ascend control lane, but it's hard to get precise. Is there a way of doing this? Only flutter repeats certain words, please, like just the last couple words in each line, for example. So one way that I like to do this, let's say if you're doing kind of like, it's often called a delay throw. It's just kind of utilizing, stuff where we're, let's say if we'll come over here, we'll do Beatles and Stones. A lot of people like this track. It's a good one by my friend Vince Malamed. All right, so let's say I want to do some like delay throws. So let's say. So say like the word night, I want to throw it, I just want to do delays. So what I could do, I'm just going to take that particular phrase here. So let's say, okay, I want to select that particular phrase and I'm going to just extend it out, let's say to there. And I have the grid on. So now when I come over here, I'm just going to go to my audio and let's go to my plugins and let's just do like a studio delay. Okay. Okay, so let's say I want this to be, I'll do quarter note delay, like this. All right, so now I will just kind of select that particular region. We played our records into the night, into the night. I'll take it off. I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. So. Up until there. So let's say I just want to come here and process that. So let's say, okay, we'll do the same kind of studio delay here. So I could turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until there, that was okay. So let's say I want to get okay. So I'll just kind of select and again process. So now we come back here. So let's just take that selection. Let's just add studio delay again on just that particular range. All right, so now when we listen to it. We played our records into the night. I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until there, that was okay. Guess all along I was so naive. So let's say I want to take just that little part here and extend the delay. So again. All along I was so naive. Now you're packing boxes ready to leave. And then like even like 10 years later, I could say, oh, that was all stupid, and I was in a delay throw phase, and I could go back and have the original files. Into the night. I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. So, but you could just kind of select the region and how long you want the delay to go to, and just come right over here. Say, okay, let's do that. I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until there. And you could be a little more precise on your selection, but you get, I think, get the idea that that's a easy way of doing that. All right. All right, so we see Michael Marshall joining from Somerset, UK. Great to see Rick from Bratman Studio saying hi to everyone. Wishing everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day, and wants everyone to drink a green one for him. All right, so we see Spacer584 says, thank you, Greg, appreciate it. Is it possible to apply different reverb on different MIDI notes quickly also? So if I was doing, again, like to different MIDI notes, because you can't really apply reverb to MIDI. I think the fastest way would be just to render the MIDI as audio if you wanted to. So let's say I want to go to an instrument track. Let's go to okay. Okay, so let's say I just want to come here. Okay, so if I was here and I wanted to kind of do that, so you could automate like different changes, but depending on the reverb, that particular reverb. So I'm going to convert this to MIDI. Okay. So let's say I'll just come here. Let's convert all of these to MIDI, and I'm going to glue these together. Okay. So now we have like MIDI notes. Okay, so we listen to it. So by the time you automate reverbs, depending on the reverb, so if it's a convolution reverb, if you changed the preset and automated that, there's a good chance that by the time it loads up to samples, it may not switch to load and unload samples and convolution reverbs fast enough. So if I was doing that, I would select the particular like snare track and just render in place. So now I have my reverb here. So let's say I have my snare as audio. So this would be faster and more reliable. So let's come over and just say, okay, now when I go to my sample editor, I could just select like this. And even if we come over here to process, we can say, okay, I want to choose a plugin. So let's say, okay, I want my reverence, my Dutch concert hall. For that, I'll select that with my range tool. Let's add a plugin. I want this to be my Revelation reverb. Okay, and let's make it like a drum cave natural. And this one, I want a reverse reverb. So let's say I want to take this and let's do a reverse reverb on it. So I'll go to my reverence. All right, so now when we listen to it, So you could, I would, because you can't really apply reverb to MIDI, you know, you could automate the plugins, but again, that may not be, you could load up like 8 different inserts or 8 different sends and automate them being off and on. I think it's faster probably to render it to audio and do rendering in place. That's how I would do it. There's a lot less stuff that could go wrong. And this is always going to be where I could select, this particular event. And if we go into, again, our audio to our direct offline processing, I could just come over here and delete all. And that's even after saving the project very easily. That's how I would approach it myself. All right, great to see Daniela checking in from Germany. All right, Contrast Power 6302 asks, in Groove Agent, can we batch assign pad outputs so that each pad gets routed to a different output in ascending order, like out 1, out 2, out 3, especially for only the pads that are being used? All right, so let's take a look. All right. All right, so we go to in. All right, so let me see if I can do this in the mixer here. Doesn't look like we can do it in the acoustic agent. Let me try like a beat agent kit. Okay, I can assign them all to the same in Beat Agent. Come over here, let's hold down just Shift. Okay. Let me see if there's another modifier key. So we can assign them all to the same output. Let's see if we could ripple them. All right, let me just try it in here as well. If I select. Yeah, I think we could assign them all to the same output, but maybe not sequentially route them. So let's say if let me see if I could do it from the outside of the plugin. So if we come here to the VSTI, let's get to my Groove Agent. I'm going to activate like different outputs. I'll start with a brand new instance of it. Okay, so let's activate all the outputs here. All right, so go to our mix console. So we have those outputs created first. Let's see if that makes a difference. Yeah, so it looks like we could assign them to the same, but I'm not finding a way out. I could play around with it. See if I come up with anything else. Let's come over. Trying different modifier keys here. Yeah, I'll play around with it, but it seems like I could route it to the same output, or I could do it one at a time. But I'll communicate that to the team as well and see if there's any tips or tricks they have. Sorry about that. All right, so you see from Baba Saw says, thanks, Greg. I had no idea there was tempo detection. Thanks. Yeah, I think that'll give you a more natural approach than trying to draw or play or, or kind of draw in or record tempo variations of vibrato. All right, so we see sounds like Matt joining from a freezing cold Chicago. All right, so we have DaVinci Girls as a question. In case to use a longer project quartz-generated timecode generator like Deity TC1 or Tentacle for multicam and multi-audio recording, how to work with such in Cubase, say 8 hours. So the first thing you probably want to do is when you go to the project setup, if you're doing 8 hours, you could come over here and make sure that your project duration is going to be set for 8 hours. What you need to do is to send... have a synchronizer. That synchronizer is going to take the incoming LTC time code, so the time code, and you need to go to the transport, and you need to come here to the project synchronization setup. You need to go to the sources, so you'll say MIDI time code. And we say the MIDI time code is coming in, and you need to connect that into a MIDI. So many of the synchronizers may have a MIDI port. You want to choose the MIDI port where your synchronizer is connected to. Sometimes it may just have a MIDI output, and you take that into a MIDI interface, but you need to tell Cubase where that incoming MIDI time code is coming from. And again, you need to... So once you have that defined, the next thing you want to do is go to your studio-to-studio setup, because now you need to actually synchronize the clocks between the two devices. So you need to take from your time code converter, a proper sync box will have not only a MIDI out, but it's going to have probably some form of a clock output. Often it's going to be a BNC word clock. It could also pass clock over a SPDIF digital connection or an AS EBU connection or an ADAT. So general digital connections. And when you come over here, you would tell Cubase that it's going to be externally clocked and where that clock source is coming from. Is it coming from ADAT? Is it coming from the BNC of your audio interface? So your audio interface needs to be able to be externally clocked. So once you tell Cubase that it's going to be the audio interface is externally clocked, what port is the clock coming in? And that's very critical that the clock is configured. Now come over to your transport and make sure that you have activate external sync. And then when you hit record, when time code is coming in, the transport will follow incoming time code. But make sure that you have the MIDI ports defined in the project synchronization setup. So you're going to do sources, activate external sync. You want to define the MIDI input. That's the easy part. The harder part is going into to make sure that your audio interface, that the clock in the audio interface is resolving to the clock in the synchronizer. This is really the critical thing. So you want to select your audio interface here and tell it to be externally clocked, and how that clock is, what is the physical connection for the clock source between your audio interface and the synchronizer. If you don't have a clock on your audio interface, it's not going to properly sync. It'll drift out of time because the clocks between the sync box and your audio interface need to be resolving to each other. So once you have that set up, you should be all set. And for Daniela, I've done like 24-hour tests with video. I did. I think I did Eric Clapton's Crossroads project in 2004. I was one of the audio engineers. I got to have a diamond album from it. I have to actually get my plaque. But we did, I think, 18 hours of recording using Nuendo for 2 different days for the festival, and worked out flawlessly. So you could do long, but you need the proper sync box for it. All right. So we see from Ed Pacheco, says, hi, if you take the scissors and snip in the middle of a track, letters or numbers appear on the sniper track, interfering with the alignment. Sorry if I didn't explain it right. All right. So let's say if I split in the middle of the track here, so let's say snip. So generally, I'm not sure what you mean by sniper track, but here we could see like the name of the file will be kind of carried over to the left-hand side. So let's say if I come over here, I cut again, we can see the name of the event. If you didn't want to see like this particular number in the upper left-hand corner, I think if we come over here to event display audio, we could choose append clip name to event name if you want to get rid of that. So if we hit OK, let's see. Let's see if that does it. Let's try a different preference. We'll uncheck show event names. And then if you wanted to get rid of that, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding what you mean by sniper. What the sniper track is. I'm going to check to see if we have John Barry's email has come in. Let me just check. Not yet. So John, maybe if you want to resend that to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, so we have Perceptive Audio. It says, hey, Greg, thanks for answering my last question. Is there a way to change from the Command key to Shift key for selecting non-contiguous events? I think it's pretty much a standard operating system. So let's say if I have non-contiguous events here, so Shift key works. Also Command key. So this is the Command key. And this is holding down the Shift key. So it looks like either work. Let me know if that's how it works on your system as well. All right, Soren asks, Greg, I was going to search for info about switching kick sound to a sample with hit points and so on, but maybe you can show me here. Glad to. All right, so let's say we have an audio recording, and I want to replace the kick drums with samples. So let's say I have a groove agent loaded up here. Okay, and I want to take like the kick drum from this recording and use that to generate events. So I'm going to select this particular track. Let's go into my kick drum. I'm going to double click. You don't have to solo. And what I want to do is go to hit points and click on edit hit points. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And what we want to do is adjust the threshold so that we just have like the kick drums coming through and not like snares that are bleeding. Then we're going to see this thing that says create. I'm going to expose this window here and we're going to say MIDI notes. And here I want to put it onto the first selected track, which is my groove agent. I want to retain the dynamic velocities. I'm going to put onto C1 because that's generally where MIDI kicks are. And I hit OK. And now we have our MIDI. I'm going to mute the kick drums here. So we have 3 kick tracks. And now we look at double click to open our MIDI editor. So if I wanted to augment, so again, to do that, just come over to like your kick track, go to hit points. You want to edit the hit points. You probably just want to adjust the threshold a little bit so that tracks are bleeding through, so that when your snare hits and it's captured on your kick drum mic, that it's not going to automatically add that as a MIDI event. And then click on create MIDI notes, and you could send that to a new MIDI track or to the currently selected track. All right. All right, so we see from Spacer584, Greg, does it make sense to use a pattern editor and build various arpeggios? I would like to create a few variants. So I'm looking to get inspired and generate different arpeggios using the pattern editor. So yeah, it's a great use for that. So let's come over here. Let's just do a quick synth project here. So let's come over. Let's do a little retrolog action. Just adjust the scaling here. Okay, and let's make this a melodic pattern. Okay. All right, so let's say I'm going to make it monophonic. I want it to be, let's do E major. Okay, so we could just come over here and say, okay, I want this to randomize. So we could say, okay, we could do different shapes. So we could say, all right, now I could take that particular pattern. Let's duplicate the pattern. And I could say, okay, let's make this go up and down. Let's duplicate this pattern. And now I want it to do the opposite direction. Let's duplicate the pattern. And let's just add randomness to it. So I'll just come here, click on random. Alright, let's keep that pattern, duplicate. Alright, so let's go ahead and just drag some of these out. Alright, so I'm going to drag it into my project window here. Alright, so we have one measure here. Alright. And I'm just going to duplicate this a bunch of times. So let's say, okay, this I want to be pattern 1. I want this to be pattern 3, pattern 2, pattern 4, 5, and then back to 1. So now when I listen to it, so very easy just to kind of come over and say, okay, I want to go to this particular pattern. I like that. Let's randomize it some more. So even now we could just, come over and say, okay, let's just, do a completely new pattern, randomize it. So, pick your key. So let's say E major again. So now if I want to come over here and, just drag that particular pattern right over into the project. So just have fun with it. So just come up. So you could just, take, a very simple pattern to start off, randomize it, and, once you get rid of it, then you could say, let's tie all notes. Let's make it legato. And even though we're doing this on synths, which a lot of people think, don't, do this for orchestral parts as well. So let's say we want to come over here. Let's load up an orchestral piece here. Let's get to Iconic Sketch. Let's choose, let's do cello. All right, so let's make a melodic pattern here. Let's put it E major again. So now when we randomize, so it's not going to be just for synths. let's slow the tempo down a little bit. So So have fun, experiment, and, you know, be creative and let things happen so that you could actually just get a lot of stuff and come up with really creative parts using the pattern editor. All right. See, Ron Stuff says, thanks, Greg, for showing me how to use the range tool for more precise delay throw. You'll be relieved to hear I'm only going through a minor delay throw phase. It's just on one song for now. Yeah, once you do a delay throw, then you start listening to a bunch of 80s tracks and realize, oh, everyone was doing delay throws, or had to automate turning on the delay send and stuff. So. All right, so we see from Beverly Beatty, just says, hi Greg, BPM, my song is 126. It's an audio file of a snare. The duration of the snare is over 6 measures. First 4 measures are offbeat, last 2 are spot on. Can you show me how to tighten this up? All right, so let's see if I still have like that example. Yeah, all right, so let's say, let me just... All right, so let's say we're in the sample editor here. What I would do, and you could do it on the project window as well. So if it's like a snare track, I would put, let's say if you want it to be on the beat, so I'm going to put my quantized value here. I'm just going to turn, let's say my quantized value, I'm just going to turn this off. But if we go, if it's audio, we could, just let me reread it, make sure I'm understanding. All right, it's an audio file of a snare. Okay, so let's say I have my audio file here. I'm going to go to my warp tool, and we have something called free warp. All right, so once we do this, and you may have to, if you don't see like your warp markers, all right, go to your audio to real-time processing and just say create warp markers from hit points. So now that I've done that, we'll see the yellow lines. Now, if you're kind of zoomed into a high level, you may not see the yellow warp markers. So if we kind of zoom in on the event, so if you find that, like, you know, some events are just like early or late, just off in time, you know, what you could do now is just make sure we're going to turn on our snap. So you can hit the letter J. And then as we just kind of grab these particular notes, we can say, okay, this is off in time. We could just have, as we move this, and we have, again, we go to our warp tool and we put it in free warp. We see kind of like this white vertical line to the left of the tool. When I kind of hover over just to the right of a note, we'll see that that yellow line, the yellow warp marker, turns white. And when that turns white, now I could just take that particular event and have that. And if I have the snap on, it could snap directly to being on the beat or off the beat. So again, come right over here, choose the free warp, and if you want to have that automatically be late or early, or you can have it kind of, it's like almost like falling into a ditch here where it'll just snap to being directly in on the grid right there. So I would just simply, hover to the right when you see it turn white. And again, this is in the warp with free warp. If you don't see these, make sure you zoom in. And and make sure that when you go to audio, you go to real-time processing if you don't see it. And you may have to convert the hit points, create warp markers from the hit points. And now we can just simply move those particular hit points and have those events snap to the grid. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Beverly. All right, so we see White Whistle, Bondrude. Hello, how can I apply effects to specific MIDI notes? For example, I have an instrument track full of MIDI notes, but I only want reverb or another effect on the very last ones. How do I do that? All right, so let's say I have MIDI notes here. Okay, so if you just want reverb on the last one, and if you don't want it, different reverbs on different events, I'll come over here. So let's take this snare. Let's go ahead and mute this particular track. Okay, so let's say, all right, let me just come over here. Let me load up the right kit. All right, so if, we don't really apply effects to MIDI, all right, but if we wanted an effect, let's say this is going to an instrument, like a software instrument, what I could do is just come over and let's just say, okay, I want to go to my sends. So I'm going to add an effect send. So let's say we want this to be, let's say our revelation, and we'll do just kind of a large, obvious reverb. All right, so if we wanted to now automate this particular track, so just to make it easier, I'll just come right over here. Let's go to our sends. And so right now, I just want to automate the send turning on. So if I'm just doing it for one event, we click on W and read. So I click on W to write automation. So I'm going to start with this off. I'll turn it on for the last two. All right, so let's come over, and now when I do this, we have no reverb, and we're just going to automate the reverb turning off and on. So if I duplicate that event, I could come over here, and the automation will follow the event. So reverb on, reverb off, reverb on. So you could just simply automate that. If you wanted a different reverb on every hit, then it probably makes sense to render it as audio so that you could do direct offline processing. But if it's just going to be reverb on and off, I would just automate the send on the effect, just like that. All right, let me know if that's helpful for you. right, great to see Tiago joining from Brazil. All right, so we see from Spacer 584, it says, Greg, if I want to use multiple VST instruments together to play the chord in the same moment, is there any way you could do this to consume less CPU, a micro delay on start of notes? So generally, if you're kind of stacking chords, it could really depend, so I don't think that shifting it slightly is going to use less audio performance, because if the notes are sounding, then it's going to be taking audio performance. So there isn't necessarily shifting it may just delay the time when the audio performance is all together by a few milliseconds, but I don't think in the end it's going to make a big difference. If you're using an instrument that can, utilize multiple instruments, so when we come over here to, let's say, Howling Sonic, for instance, and if I load up a lot of instruments that are multi-timbral may not give you the option of having, of being able to utilize multiple CPU cores. So if you have like 3 big instruments within one single instrument that, Howling and Howling Sonic can utilize multiple CPU cores. But if you have like 3 instruments loaded in, generally when you have one instrument, this one single instance of that instrument will only utilize one CPU core. So if you have like 3 sounds in an instrument that's not multi-CPU ready, then you'd probably be better off to run those as separate instances, because then that would spread across different CPU cores. Okay. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped. So you see from Contrast Power, it says Groove Agent is a powerhouse, but routing pads one by one kills the vibe. Please consider adding this feature. So one of the things I think that you might be able to also do, so let's see if we come back to like a beat agent kit. So let's say if I come here and I have my different output. So let's say this output 2, output 3, and I've gone through output 4. Let's do output 5. Six. 7, and we'll just do output 8, or 8, and we'll do our last one here. All right. So one of the things I think that you might be able to do is, let's say if we come here, so you could lock the outputs. So once you have the outputs kind of set up once, you can lock the outputs so that as you go to different kits, that those outputs will be locked, so you don't have to redo it every single time. And if you're using templates, you could obviously kind of start off with a template with the outputs locked so that they will always be ready to start. And let's see if I save this as a track preset. So let me cut the kit. All right, let me see if it is. And let me save this as a track preset. Okay, so let me do a new project. And let's load track preset. Okay, let me see if it's in my user presets. All right, so we'll drop this preset in. I'm going to load up a different kit entirely. Yeah, let me just see if we... So, you know, maybe if you start with that, but regardless, I'll pass it along as feedback with that. But if yours are switching different kits, you can lock the outputs there. All right, so we see from Soul Sound Official, who asks, hi, great question. How to replace a loop using the full Groove Agent with samples after using Groove Agent for a groove in case you want to double the drum speed for a second part. Any tricks for passing with fills, etc.? Okay, let me, how to replace a loop using the full Groove Agent 6 with samples. Okay, so I'm not sure if you have, like, if the loop, if it's an audio loop that's in Groove Agent, or if it's like a, like, let's say a pattern loop here. Let me just find something else here. Okay, so let's say if I have this, and I drop, so I'm not sure if it's a pattern or if it's an audio loop. All right, so let's say, it says how to replace a loop using the full Groove Agent 6 with samples after using Groove Agent for groove, and in case you want to double the drum speed for a second part. Okay, so let's say I have this particular pattern. Let's go to, let's say, our pattern editor. So let's say we have this. Okay, so let's say if I, let's see, if we drag this in, and let's say if I want to double that and half tempo that. So now we could take kind of that one, we have that to normal tempo, and then it's going to be double the tempo here. and half tempo from the original. So let me know if that's it, but usually you could go to the pattern itself and choose half or double speed. And then, you could, once you have that chosen, you could drag it into the project window. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding that. If I'm misunderstanding your question at all. And let me know if I am, if it's an audio loop or like a MIDI pattern that's playing sounds like a loop within Groove Agent, but not necessarily an audio loop, but like a MIDI pattern that's triggering something that sounds like a loop. All right, so Michael Teams has granted Rick 1 gallon of lemon meringue pie ice cream. All right, so we see Alex joining from Mojave, Arizona. Great to see you on. All right, so we see DaVinci Girl says, thanks for timecode instruction. Very important. I use Zoom and sound devices. Can easily set up as interface and also have more expensive ones. An internal quartz timecode generator. And important also a master clock. Yeah, so usually for something like that, sometimes the sync will be time of day. So a lot of devices, I think a lot of portable recorders will use kind of the timestamp as time of day. So it may automatically apply that as the timecode position. But otherwise, a lot of scenarios, so if you're like very portable, if it's going to be more of a traditional studio environment, you would have kind of a house clock, like a master clock, and everything would kind of follow that. All right. So we say Ed Pacheco says, I'm at Sniper Track. Can you answer my question? Thank you. All right. All right, so we see, can Steinberg make a video? Instructions, please. It'll help a lot of people, and you did explain very fast. We do have, I know that there are some tutorials on timecode. A lot of it is really, Cubase is, you just kind of tell it to follow timecode, or you could have it generate timecode. Usually like the configuration is going to be, more contingent upon what the critical element is going to be the synchronizer box. So we could do a video on it, but if your synchronizer is a different model, then that particular video is only going to be relevant for that particular synchronization, box. So, so the critical things are going to be the sync box and a word clock, and those are things that are kind of out of Steinberg's realm because we just do software. All right, so Craig Noble says, hey Greg, just tried the steps to filter out CC1 and input transformer mod wheel, still sending data. Well, just make sure that the mod wheel is actually, go to the MIDI inserts, come over here to MIDI monitor, not MIDI modifiers, sorry. And make sure that when you're doing this, like when I do this, I see that it is spitting out MIDI CC1. If it's spitting out a different controller. Now, when you do this, again, something that a lot of people miss when we go to the track and we open up the panel. And we say, okay, we want to, first we want to come over here. We want to make sure that this is active. We can insert, so type is equal to controller. Okay, and we're going to make sure that this is set to filter. So we're going to filter all controllers now. Now we're going to go to subtype, and again, we want it to be set to CC1. And now when we do this, we see that no CC1. is coming in. As I move my mod wheel, I turn this off, we see CC1. So make sure that you have like the MIDI monitor track open, and that will give you a good idea if this is all set up but not enabled, or if you have you know, another one enabled here. You know, sometimes you may have something like this and it's like, oh, it's not working. Make sure you have that particular module. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. Make sure you have that particular one, and if you want to send me a screenshot, I'd be happy to look at it like during the live stream. Okay. Okay, so we have Charles joining from France. Thanks for introducing yourself, saying hi, and welcome to the live stream, being part of the community. All right, and Charles asks, can you explain the difference between media, clip, files, event description in the info line? Okay. So I'm going to create an audio file, and let's give it a name. So we'll call it Charles. All right, so now when I record an audio file here, the audio file will be named Charles. Okay, so let's come over here. I'm going to record a couple times. We're going to punch in and punch out. So we see Charles underscore 01. I'm going to punch out. I'm going to do this again. We'll see Charles underscore 02. Okay, so since we're recording on this track named Charles, that's going to be the name of the audio file. And by default, it'll be the name of the event. So let's look at our description. So our description, I could come over here and say, Charles, I'm going to say, potential great part. All right, so the file name is still Charles02. That's the name of the audio file. When we come to our description, and we can say, this I just want to call questionable. Like that's our questionable take. So we see that the audio file is still named Charles03, but the comment or the description that I see in the name of the event, we could change directly from the info line. So that's what the description is. So we could have our audio file. All right, now let's say I have Charles05 and I want to make a copy of that event. So this is the same event, and it's playing. So these events are in different areas, but you know, it's the same audio file. But if I wanted to kind of truncate, this is playing a portion of the Charles05 audio file. So this might be a clip. So this is playing a portion of this audio file, but it is a copy and kind of a derivation, kind of a smaller selection of this event. And this event, so we could say, if we want to say, okay, short variation, and here we could just say, okay, Charles05, longer part. So this way we could have kind of, I think the clip would be, now we could also come over here, and if we go to, let's say our settings, and we go to regions, I could also come over here, and let's say if I had this as a real audio file, I could select a portion of it and add a region. So when I come over here, we could just say, okay, I like this part in the sample editor. I want to take just that little part and add that as a region. So we could have kind of smaller defined areas. And when we go into our pool, I could see that Charles 05, we have, these are all separate recordings. And then we could have regions, and these regions can be kind of a subset of parts of this particular file. So if I say, okay, I just want region 2 to be there, or I want region 1, I could just drag these particular regions to different tracks if I want to as well. So let me know if that's helpful for you. And thanks for joining us, Charles. Excuse me. All right, so you see from Roland stuff. Hi, Greg. I'm fairly new to Wavelab Pro 12. Could I use it to compile an album for YouTube that includes crossfades between some tracks and can insert track markers for YouTube to pick up? So I'm not sure if YouTube has a specific standard. So let's take a look. So we could do it for like CDs, and this may be applicable. I haven't tried to do like an album master for an album release on YouTube, but I'll show you kind of what you could do. Okay, so let's say on this, what I want to do here is, so I'm not sure if you're changing videos like on different songs or if it's just kind of a long form project. But if we come here, you know, generally what we would do for CDs, and this may be applicable in your case, we would go to, once you're in the montage, so let's say I have all my tracks laid out in my montage here, I could just come over here to my album wizard, and I could just come over here, and this could automatically generate like my title markers, my CD markers. I could hit apply, and this will put like 2 seconds of pause between each track. And like, let's say in this case, this is designed not to have any pause, but it's placed like my CD markers here. So like if I was transitioning between, you know, different tracks, I could just come right over here. So we could have the markers kind of right on top. And if I wanted to do like a crossfade between my different tracks, I could do that automatically in the montage. So I'm not sure, you know, so once we have this saved, you know, we could export it as one single audio file that could be played back, you know, as a single audio file on YouTube. If you want to add like a lyric video on top, I'm not so up to speed on that, but I'm not sure if YouTube would take like a DDP image where it would take, you know, different audio files. My guess would be that it would be like one video that would be like the entire file, and maybe the video would change when the different songs do. But we could export this if we just kind of come over here and render. So if we have crossfades going between different songs, we could do that. But I'm not sure specifically what particular format, but I'm sure that you could play it as a standard WAV file once you have all the crossfades and everything kind of configured here in Wavelab. So you go, okay, I just want to have like a perfect crossfade between these two clips. I want all of these clips to just kind of go right to the end here. And I want to do like a fade out here at the end. So you could render that as a single audio file, but I'm not sure if there's like a specific like multi-track YouTube playback system. I could do some research for when I get back after vacation. So if you let me know if you want me to do some more work on that, but I think that should kind of get you there, where at least you could have one audio file for your album process. right, you see Danielle has to go early today. Thanks for joining us. All right, Congressman Radio says, I heard that if all DAW goes subscription mode, Steinberg will protect its customers by imposing subscription on VST licenses. Is it true? Nothing's been announced, and Steinberg hasn't really done any inkling of going to a subscription model. So I don't think there's any plans of doing that. For educational facilities like with Dorco, there's a lot of schools that like to have a 1-year thing that they buy the new version every year. So for educational facilities, there's that. But, my feeling is that Steinberg will offer, a perpetual license as the main business model for a long time. I think that, Steinberg has watched the reaction of other companies that have kind of gone down that path, and we learn from how other companies have handled their situations. And it could be an affirmation for our model. All right, so we see Yassine says, when I get applied for Nuendo 15 beta, it takes too long. Yeah, so, there's a team that will, determine who is involved in the beta testing process, but I think Nuendo 15 is pretty imminent. I think they're doing a preview of it on Thursday, so... Okay, so we see from Congressman Radio, Greg, are vintage tube compressors and magneto analog modeled, or are they just digital plugins? Well, I think all analog modeled are just digital plugins. I believe that the original magneto was modeled after a Lyric tape machine, and you could probably get an idea what the vintage and tube compressors were modeled after. All right, so let me see if John Barry is... Let me just check my junk folder. Yeah, still not seeing anything. Let me just check other here. Yeah, still don't see it, John. Sorry. Yeah, just make sure it's going to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. All right, the Liquid Blue Band asks, how do you set up a live track of a song with the channels mic? Go to a tempo track. I've cut the intro to the song, crowd noise, etc., as close as I could to the beat. I want to replace the snare. Okay, to go to a tempo track. All right, so let me know if you need to do a tempo track. All right, so let's say if I come here, see if I have like kind of a good jazz piece, I think. All right, so, you may not need to do a tempo track. So let's say, So if you need to, because a lot of times what you could do is, let's say I just want to come here to my snare. If you wanted to do replacing, if that's kind of the ultimate goal, just kind of like what we showed earlier. So you may not need to do a tempo map of that, but let's say if I want to, let's add like a groove agent, and let's add an instrument track. All right, so let's look for just our. All right, so let's say if I wanted to replace that particular, so let's come over here to our hit points. And let's just kind of look at it. So if you need to do like hit point replacement, you could come over here and just do the create MIDI notes. And we'll make this E1. So kind of like as we're playing along here. So if you want to listen to that. So if I want to solo the groove agent with the. So if you need to just kind of do a particular, a live recording, and you may not need to do a demo track, so you cut the intro to song, and you want to replace a snare, so you could, just do the hit points. Let me know if that works for you, Liquid Blue Band. All right, so we see from Ed Pacheco, says, hi again, I don't have Cubase on my bar at top. How do I get to Cubase settings? So if you're running on Windows, you just have the file menu that starts. If you want to get to the settings, you would just go to the edit menu, and you would see preferences in the edit menu. So this is kind of particular to Mac OS, the preferences. So on Mac OS, it's called settings. On Windows, you go to the edit menu, and you'd see the preferences and key commands in the edit menu there. Okay, so we see from clarification from Soul Sound Official. It says, thanks, Greg. Question, I meant using Groove Agent to create the pattern inside a Groove Agent and then replace the samples for other genre samples. Okay, so I think I understand now. Sorry. Okay, so let's say we'll come over here. Let's add the instrument track. Okay. All right, so I'm going to now come over here. Let's go to our player, and we can come over here. So let's say, okay, I want to kick. so let's say we're playing. All right, let me just get to a different pattern here, sorry. All right, let me just, here I'll just clear this for now. So let's cut this pad, and I want to make my own pattern. So let's just come over here. Okay, so let's say if we have this, so we created a pattern in Groove Agent. Sorry for my misunderstanding. All right, then you want to replace the other samples with other genre samples, also the fills. I'll just split them. Okay, so let's say if we make our pattern editor here. So I'm going to save this as a pattern. So we'll just come right over here. Say pattern, and we'll give it a name, so we'll call it March 17th, 2026. Okay. So let's say if I do a different kit. All right, so now if we come over, let's say to our patterns. And let's look for just see if I all right, so let's say if I'll just modify this pattern here. Sorry, my mouse isn't cooperating today. All right. So let's see. that and see if we... All right, let me see if it's, if I just go, let me see if I see it in my media bay here. All right, let's come over here to user, pattern files. So right clicked. All right, so here's our March 17th. So let's go to another kit. Sorry, I'm going to charge my mouse here real quick. Sorry about that. All right. Sorry, my mouse battery died on me. Yeah, so I saw the pattern here. Let me just... try cutting that pad. Let's see if... Yeah, I'll see if I can get some more, get this kind of dialed in with the patterns. But it seems like, I see the pattern there, but I'm not seeing how to load it directly onto that one particular pattern. So I'll see if I could play around with that some more. Soul Sound Official, sorry about that. All right, so you see from John Barry, says, hi Greg, the new kit, the punch kit shares two features with the kit that are not in other kits. One, if you assign a remote pad to the unused pad when hit shows in the picture, but not on others. Both the punch and the kit have assignability for the minimum hi-hat control when you right click, but not on any other kit. So yeah, I mean, some of the kits will allow you to have a lot more control over hi-hat than other kits, so I think that's why. All right, so you see from Craig Nobles, says CC1 in MIDI monitor confirmed. Doesn't matter if it's a third-party synth. Shouldn't matter because the MIDI CC1 should be blocked from your incoming MIDI controller once you have that set up. If you want to send me a screenshot of your particular input transformer to make sure that it's set to, again, filter. We'll come over here. Type is going to be set to MIDI controller, subtype, set to modulation, and that it is checked. And see if it's on for a track or if it's global or project. So if you could just send me a screenshot of that, I'd be happy to take a look at it for you, Craig. All right. Okay, so we see Craig Noble says figured it out. It was set to transform instead of filter. All right, glad you got it sorted. All right, MuseScore Composer asks, what makes Cubase different from other DAWs such as FL, Ableton, GarageBand, BandLab, etc.? So I think Cubase is probably the longest running DAW and by far the most mature. I think that you see Steinberg is really pioneering concepts that get implemented years or decades later in the other programs that you listed. So I think that you'll see Cubase is going to be far more robust. It's going to have better CPU optimizations, a more broad palette of tools and available options for you to use. So a lot of times, some programs, like I was speaking with Teddy Riley, kind of, legendary R&B producer, worked with Michael Jackson and, tons of K-pop stuff. And, like when people playing tracks is like, oh, you did that in this program. You did that in this program because there's kind of predefined working methodologies, predefined workflows that are kind of really obvious in certain programs. And it seems good because, it gets you to a certain place, but it gets everyone to the same place when your tool that you're using for creativity kind of, is, it's like watching a movie and you think what's going on, but the movie's going to be the same every time. When it gets to this scene, it's always going to be the same. Whereas Cubase really doesn't impose a particular workflow on you. And I think that, again, you'll see that the concepts that Steinberg has pioneered over the years, we're the first company that actually allowed you to edit your music while it played. We're the first company to integrate MIDI sequencing, scoring, and digital audio recording into a program. We're the first. We invented VST. We invented ASIO. Those are industry standards for a reason, and they're very robust and provide a lot of great power for you as a user. All right. Wonderful to see Mark Rabin on from Montana. Everyone give a big woof to Stella. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Beverly Beatty, Greg, I just went into that time display section and it could show a lot of stuff pretty cool, like show time or beat counts. Do you know how to change the background color? Cubase 15, I'm not sure if it might be fixed, but let's take a look. So we'll come over here to the studio menu. I think it's under more options. We'll see our time display here. All right, so as we're playing, we could right click. So I think it might be fixed. So we could see different SMPTE frame rates. If you want to see seconds or bars and beats, this is obviously resizable as well. But I don't think that there's the ability to change the background color of that. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from Jay from Secret Studios says, Greg, I currently have no question, but I wanted to pause to give you thanks for all the patience and energy which you regularly provide us, and Yamaha and Steinberg for providing you. Thank you for the kind words, and it's great to see you on after so many years of doing live streams. I don't know if you signed in late, but today is our 6-year anniversary when we ramped it up with COVID. All right, so Beverly wants more cowbell today. All right, we'll see if we can sneak it in. All right. All right, Soul Sound Official just says, question, when having 2 mono tracks, example, electric guitar doubles, and I want to make both into a stereo track, can drag and drop both in a stereo track, and how to balance the left and right signal individually. All right, so if we have a scenario like that, it's not necessarily like a drag and drop, but what we could do is just come over, let's go to here. So let's say we have our two guitar parts, and we want to take these 2 mono guitars and turn them into a stereo guitar. So what I could do is I'm going to select the particular tracks. We go to your project menu, and we say convert tracks, and we say mono to multi-channel. We could do the selected tracks. We could keep the source tracks. We can mute the source tracks, and our destination format is stereo. So okay, let me just take them out of musical mode here quickly. All right. All right, so they're not really here. I'll just take like my 2 kick tracks here. So project, and then convert tracks. And we had to take these out of musical mode first. But just get a project here to convert tracks. Here, I'll show you another. These aren't like the same recordings. Okay, so let's select these 2 tracks. All right, so now we have a stereo track. So when we listen to it. So if we want to pan it to have, what we could do is switch to a combined panner. And then what we could do is just come over here and say, okay, I want more of the left channel. I can still have my stereo track, or I can move that over to the right channel. So we could pan each channel independently. So if you want stereo but kind of panned, or if you want to just invert the panning. So again, select the tracks and come right over here to project, convert tracks. And you can do multi-channel to mono or mono to multi-channel. Okay, so we see MuseScore Composer says, are the VST plugins built inside of Cubase 15 Pro? So yeah, all the plugins that Jazz Dude listed, the 93 VST plugins and 17 MIDI effect plugins, and I think 12 or 13 modulators are all included with Cubase. All right, so MuseScore Composer says, should I start with Cubase Elements and progress my way to Pro? You can. So a lot of people do that, and that's perfectly fine. Some people will just kind of jump into Pro. So either way, there's no financial penalty from starting at Cubase Elements. Then you could upgrade to Cubase Artist. And then when you need more professional features, you can go from Artist to Pro. And there's a discounted updated price, that's basically commensurate with the payment that you've done for the existing version that you have. So that's a great way to go. Okay, so we see Jazz Dude, or Gerald Ely says he can finally sit down. He's dealing with a plumber. It's always fun. We have a fence going in our backyard while I'm on the live stream. Raja says hip hop's also bringing up a great point. He says, don't forget about the control room, Greg. Well said about creating identifiable workflows based off your gear. I've always said the same thing. So, all right. So we see Ed Pacheco says, Greg, thank you. This 72-year-old appreciates all your help. Always glad to help, and thanks for being part of the community today. Glad you could join us. All right, John Barry is just saying, I think you could change the color and time display in studio setup. Time display. Let's see if it's in here. Maybe I missed it. So. All right, let me see if it's maybe under preference or setting. Don't see it in there. So I think John said studio setup. Let me just. Time display. Okay, great. Thank you, John, for that. See, I learned something new myself. So you can change the display color here. So if you want the background to be gray 50, so we could apply. Thank you for that, John. So let me try inverting it. See if we close it, reopen it maybe. Yeah, still seems to be black and white. I'll do some research on that, but thanks for mentioning that, John. All right. All right, let's go to a couple more questions. All right, so I see just pop in from Keyboard Guy. Says my SSD drive has read and write permissions enabled. All right, so we see from MuseScore Composer, what are those limitations that Elements and Artist have? So if you want to just quickly take a look, just come over here to like the Cubase comparison. So we'll say Cubase version comparison. So here you get kind of a rundown of what's in Cubase Pro, Artist, Elements, AI, and LE. So this will kind of give you a very detailed walkthrough of everything that's going to be in the different versions. Okay, so I think I see the earlier question from Keyboard Guy. Sorry about that. It says, "Hi Greg, I'm on the road and I brought my external SSD to work. All the audio files in my Cubase session show image construction errors. Session is playing fine, just no waveforms. Any advice?" So it could be that the waveforms are maybe stored on a different drive. So try going into your media bay, or not media bay, but your pool window. Or you could probably just grab it from. So try going to your media menu here, and you'll see generate thumbnail cache, and that is basically like the waveform images. So try going to your media menu to generate thumbnail cache, and that should redraw the images. All right. So we see, "Hello Greg, why is the auto gain compressor and new pattern sequencers not included in Halion 7? So they might be coming in a future update. I'm not sure. They're fairly new. So the first thing that had implemented them in as an instrument was Groove Agent. And the pattern sequencers are going to be utilized, like a lot of people will use them for drums. You can, with Halion, also just use the same kind of plugins. So you could use an auto gain compressor, or you could use the pattern editor that's already available in Cubase. So I realize it's not inside of, but we could also say that the drum machine doesn't have the Halion arpeggiator or flex phraser. So sometimes stuff is more suitable for other instruments. Obviously, if you have Halion and 7 in Cubase, you could do it all as part of the particular. You could, use it as part of the built-in, the built-in tools as well. Okay. All right, let's go to a couple questions that were mailed in. All right, so we just had a quick question of how to quantize audio. All right. So let's say if we have an audio recording that's not let's just think of a different project here. All right, so say we're just kind of playing around here. All right, so let's say we wanted to. Let's see if this part's. All right, so if we have an audio part that we actually kind of want to quantize, I can just treat it very similar to how I do with MIDI. So, if we could just kind of open up our quantize panel. So let's say, and what we want to do is just to make sure that when we do this, that we have audio warp quantize on. So let's say, okay, I want to do like 16th notes on this particular guitar part. I can say apply quantize. And if we look at kind of the audio event in more detail, I'll undo that. And we could see how the audio event here. So we look at it in more detail. So this is going to take the hit points that are automatically calculated. And now when we do this, we can say, let's just quantize the audio. And now and make it tighter. And then even if we wanted to put more of a swing on it now, we could just say, let's go to our quantized swing. So let's say, let's make it like 70%. And now we come over here. So it's really very similar to MIDI, but what you want to do is just make sure that you have the audio warp quantize enabled. All right, so we see question mailed in. Greg, I'm trying out the logical editor. I clicked on show all tracks that follow chord pads, and it collapses and removes pretty much all the tracks and leaves me with but one track, the track using chord pads. How do I revert this back to showing all of my tracks again that had disappeared? Thank you. Okay, so let's say I have like a large project here, and I kind of have hidden all of my particular tracks. So I'm going to just come over here. Let me just activate my... Okay, so when you do this, you'll probably see something that's the track visibility configuration here. So let's say, okay, I only want to show selected tracks. So if I'm seeing this and I want to get all of my tracks back, so you see here configurations, and if we just click right here, we could just say you'll have kind of different presets. So right now I have like kind of all these tracks. I see my inspector, and I want to see all of my tracks that are not following the chord track. So click right here, and then you'll see show all tracks. Then all tracks will be visible. So if you don't see that, make sure right click and make sure that you have track visibility and configurations. And then you'll see just to the right, there's kind of different presets, and you could just select show all tracks. All right, so we see it says my finger drumming is not great with all the amount of VST synths running. It created a substantial lag delay when I triggered a note on my keyboard. For the snare, there was so much lag in nanoseconds. I had my snares off beat, and quantize feature did not fix it, and it made it worse. What is a quick solution to help me get around to lagging due to lots of VSTIs activated? Okay, so if you're doing a tracking session, you have lots of instruments, and that could be creeping the latency up. One is if you just kind of go to like a MIDI track, and then what I would try to do first is come over here in the lower left-hand corner and just make sure that you have what's called the constrained delay compensation. So what that will do is bypass plugins that are causing a lot of latency in your system, and that will allow you to probably minimize the latency in your performance. So try to adjust that, try to turn that on, and that could basically temporarily disable high latency plugins so that when you record, that you can record with a lower latency. All right, let's jump back to some live questions. And let me clear my throat. Thanks for sending your questions in advance. Again, you can always send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Let's jump back to live questions here. All right. Or you see John Barry just wishing me a great vacation. Looking forward to it. And he's looking forward to the Zoom at the end of the month. All right, so Soul Sound Official says, thanks, Greg. Can you please show how to use a sampler control to sample old music and transfer it to new instruments like Hallian to resample it there? So let's say we just have an audio file here. All right, so let's say I have a guitar part. I'm going to go to the sampler control. We'll drag this guitar part down. All right, now once you're here, and you may have to just kind of make this a little bigger depending on your screen resolution, you may see these little 3 arrows. At this point, we could say, click there, and we could say, okay, I want to transfer this to Hallian, to Pad Shop, to Backbone, to Groove Agent SE. So now I could just say, let's transfer to Hallian. They'll take that guitar part, and we are now playing that particular sample, and we have the manipulation capabilities of doing it all directly inside of Hallian now. So we come over here, and we could choose kind of our different sample start. So come over to like the sampler track, and once you have that audio, if you don't see those 3 little arrows, maybe come right over here and click, and right there. Okay, so we see from Roland stuff, says, hi Greg, earlier you helpfully showed me how to use a range tool to apply a studio delay throw. I tried it, but I get a pop-up warning saying applying this effect would affect the very audio I'd already applied to the vocals. I thought it worth mentioning, otherwise it'd be great. All right, so if you have, let's say, very audio that's on the recordings, what I would do if you want to, just do like, delay throws on it. If you wanted to embed it, you could also just kind of turn on and off, the inserts. But if you wanted to do the method, so let's say, okay, I'm here and we are in very audio. All right. So what I would do is just right click here, and I'm going to say, let's just click here on a track version. And I'll say, let's do a new track version. Or it's not a new track version, but let's duplicate the version. So once I have my Very Audio edits, I would come over here. And within Very Audio, I'm going to choose, let's come over here, and we will say, I want to, from the functions, we're going to flatten the real-time processing. So we'll come over here, flatten that. And then we could do the delay throws there. If I need to go back and edit the pitch, I could just come right over here, and my Very Audio is still intact and could be edited. But now I have a track version of the Very Audio that's been rendered. So I could just do delay throws on that particular track version of it. All right, John Barry VU just asked, new MIDI services running on my PC now. If you could maybe have any info on this for the next Hangout would be helpful. So finally, with the new Windows MIDI services in Windows 11, so it's an update that was released just a couple weeks ago. for the longest time, Windows didn't have MIDI 2.0 support, and it also has consolidated a lot of different generations of MIDI drivers. So I have like two MidX8s that weren't working and weren't being recognized by the system. And, for those that's been doing Windows, like high count MIDI stuff, realize that, sometimes having some devices would have problems with drivers above, like if you had a Chord MIDI driver, and you had so many devices that the Chord MIDI driver wouldn't work. All of those types of things have been kind of resolved with that. And now we could do MIDI 2.0 capabilities. So if you wanted to do, more extensive support for, Steinberg has had it in since like version 12, and we could do it on Mac OS for some things. But now Windows is kind of caught up, so we could do MIDI 2.0, and now we're waiting for all the hardware companies to implement it as well. So, all right. All right, so we see from Mr. K Worm, says sometimes when using Very Audio on a selected track, the changes I make, smooth, pitch change, etc., do not appear to occur. Can't hear the change it's picking up. Non-visible lane on that track. So let's say let's just jump back to here. So, generally, so I'm not sure if, sometimes people don't necessarily hear it when Very Audio is deactivated here. So see if, like, the Very Audio is turned on. It says, in the selected changes I make, smooth pitch change do not appear to occur. All right, so if I come here, let me just go back to... I'll just revert this project here. So let's say if I smooth the... So I've never had a problem with that not working. Sometimes if I click somewhere here, like, it may, I may see it where the segments are kind of colorized, and that's when the Very Audio is kind of bypassed. So let me know if you see the colors or if it's bypassed, or if you have like stacked files or recording or different track versions. And if you want to send over a project, I'd be happy to take a look at it. And you can send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. See, Soul Sound Official says, last question. Is there a key command to disable all plugins at once, not bypassing? So I think you could do it through a Project Logical Editor preset rather. So let's come over here. Let's get to your setup. So if we kind of come over here, we could just say, okay, I want to, container type is track. And then there's going to be a track operation. So we would just say, okay, let's insert, let's say track operation. Let me just remove that one. So I'm going to select this. So what you want to do is say go to track operation, enable insert slot by number, and we could choose to toggle or to disable. And then we could say, okay, let's do insert 5. Let's do, and then you could just kind of keep repeating this process for all inserts. So let's say, okay, for 6 through 7 through 8 through 9, 10 through 16. And then you could just simply come right over there, hit that button, and that would disable, not bypass, but disable all of the inserts in the project. See, John Barry says, there's a MIDI X8. He says, I had one. Yeah, I was pretty close to buying new MIDI interfaces just to have, but it was like, cool, new Windows update. I got my MIDI interfaces back. So, all right. So Roland Stuff says, thanks for answering all my questions today, Greg. I've asked a lot. Have a great vacation. So you can ask as many as you want. But thanks for the kind words on the vacation. Looking forward to it. All right, Secret Studio says, Greg, is there a standard CC for controlling program changes in the synth keyboard? I'm trying out this Osmos, but can't figure out how to change sounds from Cubase. Please advise. So generally, it's technically not a continuous controller, but it's MIDI program change. So if we come here, we right-click, let's add a MIDI track. And then you would just simply come right over here. We add the track. As soon as we come over here, let's say to routing. Here we'll just go to our particular program selector. So here we could choose your channel and then just your program changes. So if you want to just come over here, so we choose your channel. And then I may have routed it. Let me just get to MIDI track here. I'm going to choose, say, out of my panorama, MIDI out. So let's say your Osmos is connected there, wherever your Osmos is connected. And then you could just come over here. Here's your bank and your program change information. So you could just come right there on MIDI tracks. All right, so we see the button man on. It says this summer/winter time is really mucking up his timetable. Hope everyone is safe and well. So great to see you on. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Tim K, it says, Mark Raven says, I've accidentally turned off or unplugged one of my computer monitors. Sometimes that will reset my audio driver to something I can't hear, a speakerless monitor, for example. So it's probably sending it to the HDMI output to your screen. And then if you have like an 1/8 inch, like an audio out of your screen, it goes to powered speakers. So it's probably sending it to the HDMI output, but your thin computer monitor screen may not have built-in speakers, but has an audio output that you could send to built-in speakers. Okay. Okay. All right, so we see Peter just wish me an enjoyable time away. Looking forward to it. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on from Oxford. All right, so we see from John Barry, do the global state buttons only bypass the visible effects and need a logical editor? Is that correct? So yes. So when you do that, it's bypassing but not disabling. All right, Michael Teams, wish me a great vacation. Thank you. All right, so I think we are at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that sneak in. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. So once again, we won't be having our live stream until March 31st, and we'll do that with our Zoom social meetup on the same day. We have just a couple minutes left. We'll see if there's any questions that sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up just a bit early. Thanks for the kind words, Beverly. So you see Tim K is just figured out with this. All right, so everyone's going to be saving up their questions. So I'm sure it'll be a full live stream when I get back. But looking forward to seeing everyone on the Zoom social. All right, so it looks like we are out of questions. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. We'll see you back on the 31st, and we'll be back at the end of the month. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you on the 31st. Goodbye.